You can use the word melancholy. You can use the word sad or whatever. It's because I'm not in that kind of mood today. I'm going to be real. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be my true Stephen A. self. Whoever the hell I am is who I am. That's the way it goes.
She walked out on a Monday and never came back. 10 years in the captain's chair of morning sports television, and then a message to the audience that sounded like a curtain call with the lights still on. Gratitude. Thanks. Memories. Then silence. No attached reasons. No farewell tour. No slow fade with champagne and colleagues lined up to reminisce on air. Just one carefully written goodbye, an empty seat, and a building full of people pretending everything was normal while the audience could feel something else entirely. The sudden missing heartbeat of a show they'd known by rhythm alone. The first shock wasn't that she left. People move on. The shock was how she left. Fast, final, and framed like a routine decision that just happened to detonate in the middle of football season. The timing created its own gravity. Viewers used to the predictable churn of the sports calendar sensed it. Producers felt it, and the comment section started to fill with the same question. If this is business as usual, why does it feel like someone pulled a fire alarm and told us it's a drill? The post people read 3 times had a warmth that felt genuine. She thanked the audience for letting her into their homes. For a decade of mornings where debates banged off the walls and hot takes simmered into viral moments. She called it an honor, a privilege. Then the part that fans seized on like detectives. The absence of one name they expected to see. Not a tag, not a line, not even a clipped, polite acknowledgement. It could have been nothing. It could have been the most loaded nothing of the year. People circled it anyway. That single omission stretched into a shadow, and the shadow became the conversation. Was it deliberate? Was it a signal? Or was everyone reaching for tea leaves because nobody offered the leaves in the first place? On the other side of the camera, the tributes arrived as scripted, as they always do when a familiar face disappears. Kind words, gratitude, the ritual the industry knows by heart. And yet, when the biggest voice in the building chose a style that can only be called controlled vagueness, details aren't for the public. I don't know all the details. I have an idea. The internet heard it as a wink. That odd combination of I know and I won't say is like lighting a match in a room full of speculation. Flames everywhere. Nobody is accusing anyone of anything here. We're talking about optics. And optics in this world are sometimes louder than reality. When you say you don't know, but also kind of know, you tell the audience exactly what to do. Guess. They obliged. And what happened next would make the timing look even stranger. People who speak in the language of contracts and calendars use a friendly word for conflict: alignment. It's polite, it's calm, it's corporate-scented lavender. It means 2 sides stared at a map and didn't see the same route. Maybe it was money, maybe it was creative control, maybe it was schedule, maybe it was the scope of the role, or what the role even is in a show that consumes the entire morning and half the internet for dessert. Whatever it was, it didn't align. And the moment that became obvious, the carousel began to spin. You know the drill. A short list becomes a long week. A long week becomes a tryout tour. The tryout tour becomes a 30 to 45-day whirl where familiar faces sit down and see if the audience lets them stay. It's clean on paper. In a newsroom, it feels like a scramble because the centerpiece is gone, and the centerpiece in a debate show is the person who knows when to interrupt and when to disappear, when to let a fire burn, and when to throw a soft blanket over the entire set and change the subject without anyone noticing it happened. Here's the thing about a role like that. It's invisible when it's perfect, obvious the minute it's empty. The person in that chair is an air traffic controller, disguised as a friend. They cue the storms, land the planes, and make chaos sound like a plan. People who have never tried to manage 3 loud personalities at once think it's easy. It's not. You can't teach that in a week, which is why the speed of the replacement cycle didn't feel like a courtesy. It felt like survival. Keep the show moving. Keep the debates hot. Keep the graph lines pointing up and the clip machine fed. The audience will adjust. They always do, until the next headline hits their feed and the old questions start to flicker against the new faces. Football swallows oxygen. Once September hits, the NFL doesn't just dominate, it dictates. The moment the biggest personality in the building started appearing on football's pregame throne, people noticed. Even if you only checked in for the high-pitched debates or watched the show in muted bursts at the gym, you still couldn't miss the pivot. The same voice shouting across weekday mornings was suddenly woven into Monday nights, standing shoulder to shoulder with the league's high priests. It's not a crime, it's a strategy. The NFL is the sun that pulls every network into orbit. If you can place your most magnetic face next to that sun, you do it. If you can do it in the exact window where another major on-air piece has just left, you do that too. It looks like momentum. It sounds like inevitability. And it tells everyone behind the scenes where the energy is going. While one lane expanded, another stabilized. With the NBA universe, another anchor locked in, and suddenly the company's two biggest properties looked fortified. Football with an extra megaphone, basketball with a steady hand. Add it up, and the calculus is simple. Protect the pillars, then patch the roof over the morning show and keep it dry. In a vacuum, that's smart business. In the real world, where viewers attach personalities to institutions and treat departures like betrayals, it looks deliberate, even if it isn't. People don't tend to believe in coincidences in media, because coincidences in media are usually a calendar with ink we can't see. But the internet doesn't run on calendars. It runs on theories. The rumor economy thrived. Podcasts pressed record. Commentators with insider Rolodexes and commentators with no Rolodexes at all did what they do best. Talk it through, draw lines, build cases out of whispers and what-ifs. The story skewed into two camps. One side said this was strictly math, pay grades, leverage, time slots, a network making hard choices with big numbers on whiteboards. Another side tipped toward chemistry and control, that any long-running show becomes a kind of ecosystem, and that ecosystems often break when the balance tips too far toward one creature's gravitational pull. Not allegations, interpretations. In the gap between confirmed details and press releases, those interpretations gain shape. If you've watched this industry long enough, you know how it works. People project patterns from previous blow-ups and use them to decode new ones. It's messy and sometimes wrong, but it's how the public keeps score when the official scoreboard goes dark. Once rumors start, they don't stop. They split and multiply. Some insisted a rival network would gladly throw money at a polished host with football, college, and features experience. Others predicted a controlled pivot. Guest appearances, guest moderations, guest anything that keeps the brand active without committing to a single lane too quickly. The loudest theory said the quiet part out loud. Football rules everything. So attach yourself to football if you want control and longevity. It isn't romantic, but it is true often enough to feel like a universal law. If you've ever watched a post-game show transform into a cultural event because one guest showed up, you've seen the law at work. Sometimes the best move after a public exit isn't to land on another public stage. Sometimes it's to go home, a campus appearance, a Q&A, a photo that says more than a press release. The calm after the storm, the signal that the person at the center of the conversation is not hiding, not melting down, not spiraling into an online back and forth, just resetting. People underestimate how powerful that is. It doesn't answer anything. It doesn't need to. It reminds the audience that the character they know from TV is also a person with a past, a place, a community. You can argue about tactics and salaries and segments. You can't argue with home. And that single beat allowed fans to recalibrate, to stop doom scrolling and start guessing which format would fit next. Let's talk fit. There's the referee role, sitting between two loud stars and making sure the sparring stays compelling without turning into chaos. She's done that at a high level for a very long time. But there's also the host as narrator role, the one where the show breathes between hot takes and becomes a conversation on purpose. That lane suits someone with range and curiosity, someone who can jump from a tense debate to a soft-spoken interview and keep the audience leaning in. Then there's the football lane, studio, features, campus Saturdays, Sunday wrap-ups. Anywhere the machine needs a steady pilot when the pressure is highest and the window is massive. People love to say anyone can do it. That's how you know many people have never tried. Timing is its own skill. Keeping superstars on track without looking like you're keeping superstars on track is another. Doing both and making the audience feel like they're in the room, that's the craft. Zoom out. This isn't a single departure. It's a case study in how modern sports media actually works when billion-dollar schedules and league relationships sit at the head of the table. The old myth says networks serve fans first, and everything else follows. The new reality says the network is a bridge between fans and the leagues, and when the leagues call, the network answers. That means faces become chess pieces, on a much bigger board. Some pieces are queens. They move everywhere and change games by showing up. Some are rooks. They patrol lanes where the brand needs to look tall and unshakable. Some are bishops. They operate diagonally, sliding between projects that don't look connected until you see the board's geometry. And some are knights. They jump formats, surprise audiences, and land where they're hardest to predict. What does the audience get in exchange? More access, more behind the scenes, more of the league world embedded directly into the studio language. The cost is invisible until it isn't. Creative friction, players who won't sit in certain chairs, topics that go fuzzy around the edges when the league would prefer a softer tone. Nobody needs to put that in a memo. You can feel it when the conversation hits a glass wall. Occasionally, the wall is practical. Lawyers exist for a reason. Often, it's strategic. Don't light the building you rent from on fire. When a show loses a host in the middle of that tension, the loss isn't just a person leaving. It's a layer of chemistry gone missing. Chemistry is what lets a conversation kiss the wall, wink at it, and still feel honest. And so the network does what networks do. It stabilizes its pillars, spreads its biggest personality across the most visible platforms, and auditions the next generation of traffic controllers to keep the mornings humming. That plan might look cold to fans who fell in love with a version of the show that felt like family. It isn't cold, it's calculated. In a league-first era, calculation wins. And personalities who adapt to that era, who understand that the job description now includes being useful to the league's rhythm without losing your own, become untouchable. That isn't an indictment, it's an observation. Some people thrive inside that framework, some don't. When those two groups share a set long enough, something eventually gives. There's another layer that doesn't get discussed on camera because it's not telegenic. Stamina. Morning television is a grind that eats years. Early alarms, late prep, never-ending news cycles. The pressure to be at your sharpest at 8:02 a.m. for a segment that will be clipped and posted before your coffee cools. 10 years in that pressure cooker can either turn you into steel or make you feel like you've been living inside a drum. It's not outrageous to imagine anyone asking for more control, more space, a new angle. You can call that creative freedom. You can call it survival. Either way, when the terms don't match, exits happen fast. Sometimes clean, sometimes not. Often with a smile that says, I'm grateful, because that part is still true. Ask people who've sat in that chair what they remember most, and they'll tell you about the rhythm. The moment when two guests are pushing too hard in the same direction, and you throw a lifeline without them noticing. The split second when a topic starts to feel like quicksand, and you pivot to a stat, a memory, a clip the audience has been waiting for. The instinct to let a guest go long because their emotion is real, and then the equal instinct to cut them short because their emotion is spilling over into something the show can't host. Those moves decide whether a segment feels electric or exhausting. They also build trust. When the host goes, the trust needs to be rebuilt from scratch. That's why replacement tours often feel like auditions for chemistry as much as competence. The network is not just asking, can you do this? It's asking, can you do this with these people, for this audience, inside this machine? If you're wondering whether any of this is unusual, it isn't. It's just rarely this visible. Timing made it visible. The calendar turned. Football roared. One star spread onto the season's crown jewel broadcast. Another thanked the audience and stepped aside with a line that doubled as a promise. Stay tuned. That's not an accident. It's a message. She could have said nothing at all. Instead, she told you not to look away. And that means she knows the next thing will matter. A rival show, a features-forward project, a football lane that lets her drive instead of referee, a travel and sports hybrid that turns athletes into people in far-flung places, a digital-first format with a studio spine. The options aren't just plentiful, they're tailored to what she's actually good at. What happens to the show she left? It survives, because of course it does. It will keep shouting, keep trending, keep sending clips across every timeline. It will discover that some temporary hosts aren't so temporary, that certain pairings create strange new energy, that a single well-timed eyebrow raise can be as viral as a manifesto. The greatest trick successful brands pull is convincing the audience that the heart of the show is the title, not the people. The truth lives somewhere in between. Titles last because people keep them alive. When the people change, the title must relearn its heartbeat. That's the season you're watching now, the relearning. Meanwhile, the audience will keep reading between the lines. They always do. Every choice will be translated into a statement. Every seating chart will become a hint. Every moment of awkward laughter will be clipped and turned into evidence of something. The conspiracy boards will live on one end of the spectrum. The sober reads on media business reality will live on the other. Most viewers live in the middle. They just want the show to feel like itself again, and they'll forgive almost anything if that feeling returns. They'll also remember who told them to stay tuned, and they'll check back to see whether that promise delivers something worth their time. You might be waiting for some grand reveal, a confession, a receipt, a tell-all that drops names and drags the hallway into the sunlight. Maybe that's coming. Maybe it isn't. The real reveal is quieter. It's the understanding that loyalty in this era doesn't look like it used to. Loyalty now is the capacity to be useful to a very large, very loud, very valuable ecosystem. It means showing up where the league needs you, when the league needs you, with the exact tone that keeps partnerships shiny and fans entertained. If you can do that and still make the show feel alive, you get promoted. If you ask for something outside that flow and the timing isn't right, the call can go the other way. That's not betrayal. It's the physics of modern sports TV. So what comes next? If she chooses the football lane, expect a set built around control and clarity, with room for real conversation that breathes. If she chooses a features lane, expect athletes talking like humans and stories stitched together by curiosity instead of confrontation. If she goes the rival route, expect a platform that leverages her decade of debate traffic skills, but lets her own the pacing. If she goes independent first, expect a measured rollout. Pilot episodes that feel like proof of concept and guest lists that say, see, I can bring the room with me. No matter the path, the first on-air moments will matter, and the first long-form interview will matter even more. That's when the unanswered questions will be asked, not harshly, not recklessly, but directly enough to give you the sense that the person you watch steer one of TV's loudest ships is steering her own. There's a version of this story where everyone is right. The network did what it had to do. The star did what stars do. The departing host did what people do when the map no longer matches the road. Viewers got a mystery to chew on and a season of experiments to watch. In that version, the drama fades and the work remains. It's the least cinematic ending and the most realistic one. But there's another version, the one audiences secretly hope for. The day when the curtain lifts and the timeline makes sense. Not in a messy way, not with anger, but with candor. The kind that makes people say, okay, now I get it. It might come as a carefully phrased interview. It might come as a single line dropped in a new show's first monologue. It might never come at all, replaced instead by success so obvious that the old questions feel small. Until then, the board looks like this: a show relearning its heartbeat, a star amplified across football's biggest windows, a steadied hand across basketballs, an empty chair turning into an audition tour, and a familiar face quietly plotting a next move that fits who she is now, not who she had to be every morning at 8. Fans will take sides, because fandom is a sport of its own. Some will ride for the show no matter who sits in the middle. Some will follow the face because it's the voice they trust. Some will only show up for football and call everything else noise. And some will just want a good story told well, with enough honesty to feel like the people on screen still remember who's watching. When the truth finally lands, if it ever lands in a way that satisfies the eye and not just the spreadsheet, it will probably sound simple. Not a scandal, not a smoking gun, just a stack of decisions, each one reasonable on its own, that added up to a goodbye that looked like a thunderclap. That's often how big TV shifts happen. They seem sudden, and then you realize the ground was moving for months. The audience only feels the quake when the plates lock into a new position. That's where we are now, standing on new ground, testing it with each step. It's solid enough to hold a show, solid enough to host a comeback, solid enough to build something different on. So keep your eyes open. Pay attention to who shows up where and when. Notice which conversations feel freer and which ones now hit the glass walls sooner. Watch how the morning arguments evolve when the referee changes, and how Monday nights carry themselves when the familiar voice from Weekday Wars walks into football's cathedral. And above all, remember the one line that matters more than any rumor swirling around your feed. Stay tuned. Not because drama lives around every corner, but because careers built on consistency don't end in a disappearing act. They pivot, they reinvent, they choose a lane and floor it. When that next lane appears, it won't whisper. It'll announce itself, and you'll know exactly why the Monday reveal felt like a thunderclap the day it happened. The question left hanging isn't about who's right or who's wrong. It's about priorities. When the choice is between star loyalty and league gravity, which one gets the final vote? The network will say both. The schedule will say the league. The audience will say, give us a show that feels alive and we'll forgive the rest. As for the people on screen, they already know the answer. That's why one chair sits empty, why another voice booms under stadium lights, and why a familiar name is out there somewhere, picking the next room to electrify. Drop your theory in the comments. I'll be there reading, because this story isn't finished. It's just at halftime. And in this game, the second half is where the real adjustments start.